Good evening. Welcome to the Esquire Townhouse 2018. Thanks very much for coming. My name's Johnny Davis, and I'm absolutely delighted to have sat with me tonight Inge Solheim. Inge is a world-leading polar consultant from Norway who's undertaken some of the world's most difficult expeditions, the most headline-grabbing perhaps being Walking with the Wounded with Prince Harry, but also a number of less well-publicised expeditions such as walking solo to the South Pole with a blind man on at least one occasion, I believe.
Yeah.
And many
solo. It's not a solo expedition when we're two or three.
Okay, good point.
Yeah.
As well as many solo expeditions that you have done yourself.
Yeah.
There's going to be some time for some questions at the end. But before that, let's just have a quick look at a short film of what Inge does. Okay, so how do you describe what you do for a job?
So I've always been guiding in the mountains in Norway where I grew up, and then I did many years of doing normal jobs, like I was founding a few companies, and then I worked 9 years in banking. But nature just called me back, and I went back full-time 17 years ago. And what I did in the beginning was guiding people from A to B up a mountain or somewhere like that. And now I feel I'm more like a consultant or a coach and facilitating other people's expeditions and experiences. And the title Explorer doesn't feel like it fits me because it sounds too big. For me, the explorers are the old guys like Shackleton and Nansen and Amundsen and Armstrong and these guys. Yeah. So I'm a guide, basically.
Okay. I imagine people have quite extreme reactions when you tell them, you meet people at parties and say, "This is what I do for a living." It's not a regular job, right?
I think my job is connected to a bit of a myth. When they use titles like adventurer or explorer, everyone has a dream about going somewhere or they've been somewhere. So it's a good opening opening sentence, like I work as an explorer or adventurer or something, because everyone has something they want to talk about. Whether you're like a priest or a Uber driver or whatever you are, everyone has a dream. And I guess that my job, my weird job description, is a bit mythical that way.
Right. Tell us about what was wrong with finance.
I think that was for a period of my life right and challenging enough, and I learned a lot. It just wasn't for me to be in an office, and I was lucky to be able to leave, retire at an early age. I should probably have saved up a lot more money because it looked very stupid to go from a really well-paid job to nothing, because the first 10 years of doing what I did, 10 to 12 years doing what I do, I was basically a poor ski bum, accumulating experience in the poles, in the Norwegian mountains, in Greenland, in Iceland, Antarctica. And but one day, I was one of the most experienced guys, and people started paying me and good money for doing it. So right. I got really cool, prestigious jobs, and now I can make a good living of it.
Yeah. Where did the outdoors, the kind of bug for the outdoors, come from as a kid?
I think it's connected to some lack of other talent. If I had shown a talent in football, I might have been like really unlucky and ended up as a football player. But I had no talent in football, so I found my passion and my talent out in nature, where that's where I felt a sense of achievement. I learned about myself, and guiding other people, I learned about other people. So that was really rewarding for me, and it was so deeply rooted in me that every day in my office in Oslo, or I worked also in the UK a little while. And every time I looked out the window, it's good weather, I wanted to be outside. Every time it was bad weather, I really wanted to be outside. So yeah, I was just like a trapped animal.
Right, okay. Yeah. I think I'm right in saying your favourite place, and one of the most dangerous places, is the North Pole. Is that
That's
fair
true.
to say? Okay.
Yeah.
Why is that?
The Arctic Ocean is a special place because everything is in constant movement, and people don't realize this, but it's a huge ocean the size of Europe, and it's covered by a thin layer of ice, about 1.5 meter thick, and people think they're like big icebergs. They think that it's like like crevices, and no, it's a really relatively thin layer of ice and 4,000 meters of water, and this thin layer of ice is constantly moving, so current and wind is making it drift around. Pressure ridges are forming when the ice crashes together. Open leads are forming when they drift apart. So it's a constantly challenging environment that where if you lower your guard for 5 minutes, you will get beaten or eaten up, or you constantly have to be on your edge. And as most of you probably have experienced in your life, the most challenging things and the most difficult things are always the ones that are most rewarding as well. So going to the North Pole is what makes me feel most alive in my job. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that, I guess I talked about the headline grabbing stuff at the start, and I guess the North and South Pole are fairly extreme examples, but it's the journey, isn't it, that appeals to you?
Yeah, more and more I feel that the preparations I do to alone or together with other people become more important than the goal itself. So the process of preparing someone, finding out what their ambition is, where they are today and where they have to be to reach the goal. So I like the part where I'm training people and mentally and physically preparing them for the expedition, so they can land on the ice. When we go to the North Pole, we can step on the ice with confidence and competence, and that's become the most important part of my job as a facilitator for this journey that they go through, the personal development journey. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm guessing you have more people wanting to do trips with you than A, you can take, and B, are actually suitable for it. What's the vetting process like? Do you turn people down if you think they're not going to be able to hack it?
So I'm now in the lucky position to afford to, and I've always done it anyway, even when it was stupid to turn away people, I still did it, because I want to travel with people that either need it, or people who I find interesting and that are nice, or that I want to travel with. If I was aiming to maximize my income, I would have stayed in finance, and now I do this job as a personal development journey, and I feel very lucky because I get to meet interesting people. I get to learn about myself in this environment and other people, and that I've turned away a lot of people, not because I'm better than them or that they are wrong. It's just that the timing or the chemistry wasn't right. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other aspect. The North Pole and the South Pole are symbols of hardship, rightfully so, and it's not for everyone. I think it's if you see them as symbols, everyone needs to feel deep inside, what is my North Pole? And that could be things like learning to play guitar is your North Pole. For some people, just going out, facing the world, that can be a North Pole. So there are challenges that are more important and harder than going to the North Pole. It's just for us, it's a symbol of hardship, and
What are the attributes that you would need to be? I mean, a lot of it is to do with solitude and endurance, I guess, as well.
People would be surprised. During the training, I push people hard, and they get stronger, they get mentally prepared and stuff like that. But my good friend Erling Kagge, he is a Norwegian explorer, and he said, when asked, he said that the South Pole is 90% a mental challenge and 60% a physical challenge. So, which is, it describes it really well.
Okay.
And when I say you need 150%, it's not that you need to be superhuman. The extra 50% is you really have to want it a lot. If you don't want it enough, halfway through the training or halfway through the expedition, you'll doubt your own motivation. You'll start to find excuses for not continuing. There's this mental negative spiral that you'll end up in if your motivation isn't strong enough, and if it's not a deep inner motivation. If you go there to get bragging rights, or just to like raise your own media profile, that's a shallow motivation. And when you're hungry, scared, cold, that motivation is not strong enough.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think many people here have similar experiences in other aspects of life. And when people, they want something, but they don't want it enough. So they're not willing to do what it takes. And one of your countrymen here, a relatively famous friend of mine called Winston Churchill, he said, sometimes doing your best is not enough. You have to do what is required. And the North Pole is typically a goal where you have to do what is required.
Right.
Like, your mother can be really happy with you and satisfied when you do your best, but I'm not. You have to do what it takes.
Okay. Yeah. You touched on it there, but there's quite a lot of explorers on TV now. It's become a sort of a media kind of thing, mentioning no names. That's not something that's ever been for you. Yeah.
Well, I've been lucky to be part of some very inspiring and interesting TV productions, and there has been questions and requests for other things, more like reality style as well, and hosting shows where we're gonna pretend to be in hardship, pretend to do to be in a very remote place. And that's not for me, because I would lose my own self-respect, and I would also lose credibility in the business if I was faking it on TV. Yeah. I'd rather just be unknown and stay in the shadows than to fake it to make it on TV.
Yeah. Okay. The thing that most people, I guess, would want to know about is the danger of doing some of this stuff. But danger is not something that's in your vocabulary necessarily, is it?
Well, it is. I'm not a superhuman guy. My daughter is here. She could testify. Like I'm a soppy, cuddly bear. I'm not really as tough as people think. I'm just tough when I need to be. Mm-hmm. And you hardly ever need. I'm not a kind of leader that walks in the front and says, "Follow me." I try to prepare people so that they have their own expedition and they are so capable and competent that they are safe. And on the safety and risk aspect, good preparation mitigates the risk. So my friends in Royal Marines, when I was younger, I used to train with some Royal Marines in Norway, winter warfare, and one of them, he taught me the 7 Ps, which is proper planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. And it's so true. So my risk, I believe that whether I go to the North Pole or I go base jumping, I take less risk than an average person driving their car to work with kids in the back seat, yelling at them, texting, fixing your makeup, whatever you do. I don't know, I'm not saying you use makeup, but the unconscious risk that people take in their everyday life is probably bigger than what I do when I'm working.
Okay, and the preparation goes, as you suggested, from the mental to the...
Yeah, it's the whole aspect. Sure. Just do what it takes to prepare for the challenge that lies ahead. Okay. And the X factor, the asymmetric risk that follows anything we do as human beings, I just have to accept it and hope that I have a clear head and a physically strong body to handle it when it comes. And I don't go around worrying about things that can happen. I just try to respond to what's happening when it happens and try to have a relevant response to what happens.
Before a trip, is there a period of time when you get to the point when you know you're ready, when maybe the week before you think, I'm not quite there, and then suddenly I'm good to go?
There are stages where, so depending on how long the expedition is. So I do trips with people that are from 1 week to 3 months. A 3-month expedition has a very different preparation than a 1-week expedition. For a long one, I would probably bulk up a little bit, like enjoy some Nutella on bread, or Nutella with bread, and bulk up a little bit. And I would go through a very hard physical training, and then the last few weeks before the expedition, I would just eat and bulk up and make sure that I avoid injuries and stuff. But most trips that I go on, I do logistics preparations, and physically I'm more or less ready most of the time. And then I make sure that we have all the contingency plans. People know what they're doing in different phases, and I have lists of checklists that I have to go through. Sure. But I usually don't look at them till the last day or something, because I have this nerdy, half autistic memory of how many screws, how many chocolates, and everything I have packed up, and what I need. So one day it will hit me in the face, I'll forget something. But so far, there's been a few expeditions, and I've never forgotten anything yet.
Okay. Any lucky talismans, charms?
No, I don't believe in stuff like that. You know, like I told you when we had this chat in the magazine, I believe in half of what I see and 1/3 of what I hear. Right. So I left religion many, many years ago, about when the age of 5 or 6, and my spirituality is limited to I love nature, and I feel that I am nature, and I'm in my element out there. I also feel connection with people, so I guess that's spirituality as well.
You've got a very interesting take on nature, in that we are all nature. That's
we are nature. I think in these times where people are getting more aware of the impact we have on nature around us, people tend to talk about venturing into nature or do nature experiences, but we human beings, I see myself as nature. You know, I am nature. And I think our ancestors were more in touch with these things. They felt the seasons. They were depending on the crops or the fish, like the fish, and they could catch, and the hunting, and they felt that connection or this belonging in nature more strongly than beautiful, sophisticated people like yourself, domesticated as well, I guess, and urbanized, living here in the Matrix. But remind yourself that you are nature, and this interdependency, we are going to be hit hard if we don't correct our course soon. And if, like mentioned before, Jacques Cousteau, he said, we protect what we love. And if people would love themselves, respect themselves, love nature as a whole, I think we would protect it better. We would use our consumer power, our voting rights, or we would use everything we can to elect more competent leaders, and we would choose products and services from people or companies that were more sustainable. And this is a very powerful thing we could do. And people underestimate. They feel overwhelmed when they read in a paper like, we're gonna, like 1.5 or 2 degrees, we're gonna all be flooded. And we can change that. I'm a climate optimist. Okay. We human beings can change it. We might have to have a crisis first. Right. Because people don't really wake up until they have a crisis, I've learned. It's like a chubby guy who gets his first heart attack. He starts Googling diets. And we human beings, we might have to, a lot of people in the world has a crisis already, a climate crisis or pollution or things like that affects them directly today. But in our spoiled, rotten matrix here, we're not feeling it enough. So we don't feel the urgency yet.
If you're in I think you've got a different viewpoint because you've been out to some of these amazing places. Do you think, is there something that we could do? Could we step outside the matrix and have a look? Would that give us some insight?
I think you're onto something, like stepping out of the matrix. So I think we all have opportunities to do that all the time. Just lift your head and look at the clouds or hear the birds, or when you're walking to work, take off your earphones, or get off one tube stop earlier and walk through the park instead of, in your vacations, if you have any, venture outside of the city. Maybe not the most crowded place. I hate crowds. Not this crowd, of course. It's beautiful people. So I think we all have opportunities, and the barrier for entry into the natural world out there with all the green stuff is not that big.
Okay.
It's not as dangerous. The city is much more dangerous. So when we're going out of our comfort zone into the highlands or I don't know what you like. You have the moors here. You have so-called mountains here. We call them hills where I come from. But there's some beautiful nature experiences right outside of your door.
Okay.
And very close and very easy accessible.
Okay. You tend to go for the more extreme. The other thing that people often, I'm imagining, will want to talk to you about is the cold, because you don't mind the cold, right?
I don't mind the cold for two reasons. One, I'm acclimatized. We in the village where I grew up, we often had minus 35 in the winter, so we learned to dress right. And the key to staying warm, even here in the UK and in London. London is one of the coldest places I know, because you have these wet colds sometimes and the winds, and you're never dressed right. So
what should we be wearing?
The trick is to stay dry and eat natural fibers like wool. Amazing stuff. So you can sneak in like a wool base layer under your fancy shirt, and wool socks, and that will help you a lot. And make sure that when you walk out, or when you walk inside, you take your layers off so that you don't start sweating, because as soon as you walk out again, you'll be cold. When the sweat evaporates from your body, it steals a lot of heat. So moisture management is the key to staying warm.
Okay, very good.
I don't know if you understand the definition of moisture management, but for me, it's just staying dry. It means that I often start walking cold. I accept the cold, and then it's not that scary.
Okay.
Yeah, and relax.
Okay. Do you get scared?
I have that. That is one of the most common questions I get, because people have this impression that I am like a daredevil or something. I'm not. I think in the moment I'm not that scared, because I'm focused on the job or whatever lies ahead of me, in front of me, and I've been exposed to some risky situations, and it sort of numbed my response for fear. The times where I'm reminded of my fear is when something can happen to people I love. Okay. So the 4 or 5 times that I can identify as scary or moments of fear, they're all connected to someone else, and the risk of someone getting hurt that I love or that I care for or have a responsibility for. But I don't worry about stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't walk around worrying about stuff.
Okay. Is it fair to say that some of the work that you're most proudest of is work with so-called disabled people? I mentioned the
I like the way you repeat so-called, because my experience is that an injury or something you're born with, a disability, so-called disability, a challenge, most of the people I've met who get a challenge thrown in their lap, young or old, human beings have an incredible ability to adapt and work around the problems. When the initial phase of maybe grief or missing a limb, or maybe you have to retrain after a stroke or something, you have to retrain your brain and your body. I feel that most people actually come out stronger and better from it. So the so-called disabled people are often, at least when they come to me and want to go to one of the poles, they have overcompensated for their disabilities and are on average more able-bodied than
Right.
Most people.
They really want to get there.
Yeah, they really want to go, and they are positive, optimistic, solution-oriented people that lift their head and see, so this is what I have, or this is what I have, and how can I work around this? And it's been the most rewarding thing for me. I've led TV productions and expeditions and trips and with mental disabilities or mental injuries, physical injuries, disadvantaged children, and they've been the most inspirational and most rewarding things I've done, and I hope I can do a lot more of them.
It sounds like you get as much out of it, if not more, than they.
Oh yeah, if people knew what I get out of my job, they would stop paying me, because I'm getting more than most of them, I think. It sounds wrong maybe, but I feel like my job is my little fishbowl where I can observe human beings in the raw form, where all the layers are peeled off. When people are really hungry and tired and scared and cold, they are down to the basic human, basic human response or reactions. And in that little bubble that we create on the expeditions up a mountain or on the North Pole, they are receptive, or they're open for new ways of thinking and doing things. Right. So I'm not saying that I'm molding them, but we are creating an environment for people to grow and to develop their mental and physical capabilities. Observing that and being part of it and facilitating this growth in human beings is extremely cool. It's an extremely cool part of my job.
What's the compliment you get most often from people who've gone with you?
Compliment?
Compliment, yeah. What do people say when they've come back in one piece?
Well, I don't know. Like, I think what they're saying directly and indirectly is that they own the experience and the achievement themselves. Mm-hmm. So I'm not taking credit for it, and they understand that I've been instrumental in facilitating it, but they are proud of themselves, and that's the most rewarding thing for me. And then something that I feel is important for me from my own, what I need to hear or what I need to feel is that I have made people feel safe. And when most people tell me that, they felt safe. And in that safe space, people dare to test their limits because they feel that I'm a safety net, but I'm not doing it for them. I'm just providing this safety net so they can grow and they can push themselves mentally and physically. And I think that's what I like best to hear, that they've been feeling safe, but also that they felt a sense of achievement.
Okay. I'm fascinated by the story of 1, 2 people without impaired vision, blind.
Oh, yeah. That's really. Yeah. So I was lucky to guide the first blind man to the South Pole, and his name is Mark Pollock. He's from Hollywood in Ireland, in Belfast. And Mark is an incredible person. He lost his eyesight 15 years ago. In 2008-9, the season 2008-9, we skied to the South Pole, and he had been blind. That's a long time ago now. He's been blind 10 years, and he celebrated his 10 years of blindness by skiing 1,000 kilometers to the South Pole. It's pretty amazing in itself. Mark, he trained hard, and he prepared really well. He skied to the South Pole, and when we got there, he celebrated it by flying a flag with 200 pictures on. And he had printed on silk 200 pictures of people that had been there for him and helped him in his life, which is very different from the celebrations I've seen on the South Pole or North Pole before, like 20 times to the North Pole, and I've never seen anyone fly a flag up with pictures of their friends and teachers and stuff like that. So it was quite an interesting thing, and I was so impressed because, yeah, he celebrated not himself or anything. He celebrated the people that have been there for him, and I think that's a good reminder for us. And then Mark is an extremely inspirational guy. and he has his radio show. The summer after, Mark, he sailed around Britain, the summer after, like 2009, and he also was a guest at the Henley Regatta. It was a really warm year in 2009, so someone had left big window open, and Mark fell out of the window in the middle of the night, and he broke his back. So Mark is now paralyzed from his belly button and down, and still blind, of course. Still the most inspirational guy I know, and he is now working on curing paralysis with the Christopher Reeve Foundation, and he is spending 6-8 hours a day working with people who make exoskeletons. He does talks, TED Talks and all sorts of things to inspire other people. So what the fascination I have with Mark is, first of all, he's a great guy, good values and all that stuff, but where does he get it from, this inner force to lift his head and move on when not one disaster, like 2-3 disasters hit him? Right. And I find that extremely fascinating, and I want to be like him one day.
Okay. You go off on your own as well as taking people with you.
Sometimes, yeah.
What are the pluses and minuses of the solitude?
Yeah. Some people find solitude challenging because they are not comfortable in their own company. That sounds really bad probably, but I'm really comfortable in my own company. I like myself in that space, not always in crowds or in groups or in a social setting. That I like myself. I like my person when I'm out doing what I love. I like myself best then. So going off alone gives me an opportunity to think things through from beginning to end, or a thought process can go on for days without distractions. And we are bombarded constantly with people who want our attention, with social media, with commercial impressions, and a lot of noise. And the silence and the solitude out there, and the lack of distraction makes all the intention to what you're thinking and what you're feeling goes inwards. And that resonance you get in that empty silent space is incredible. It's amazing, and you can't get it from like 2-3 days in the forest. You have to stay out of the matrix for a while, and it reminds me of the question. So I feel very fortunate. Of course, you miss the people you love sometimes, but you don't dwell on it. It's not strategic or tactically smart to dwell on things you can't do anything about. You shouldn't have gone then if you're like, yeah. Right. When you decide to go, you have to commit to it.
Okay.
So I don't think about the food I could have eaten or the people I could have been with, or what I'm missing out on. I'm feeling very privileged and fortunate to be in that position there and then. So, and the other aspect of it, I think, in the 60s and 70s, psychologists were describing something they named the overview effect. So they debriefed astronauts coming back from space, and the astronauts they were showing a change in their perception of themselves and relative to the world and our ecosystem and our community as human beings. They came back changed, and this overview effect was the result of leaving the planet and seeing it from the outside. They saw this thin atmosphere that we're polluting. They saw the currents, the erosion. You basically, if you're on ISS, I don't know if you know this, but you're spinning around the Earth 19 times a day. And I feel, I haven't been to space yet. It's a big minus in my travel resume. But I've been lucky to speak to a few astronauts, and I really want to go out in space. But I think I've tasted a little taste of that, spending 3 months isolated in the ice and cold, or the cold isn't the factory really, because you accept it and you adapt to it, but spending time away from the matrix, as I call it, has given me a tiny little perspective, or tiny little change in perspective, seeing the whole from the outside. And it made me more aware of my tiny little part of our community or the world. So I feel small, but at the same time I feel powerful in the sense that like I can influence this. I can influence my life. I can influence nature and social settings, my family, my friends, and I have a responsibility to do so. Yeah.
It sounds so idyllic, does it not? When you come back to the Matrix, to London, to the iPhones and what have you, does it not, do your head in?
It does sometimes, yeah. Right. I don't know if so people were describing me when I came back from. I did a 3-month expedition once, and I came back, and my friends said I was so absent for a while, and it was because I was mentally retreating into myself. The noise, the smell, the social interaction, all the bullshit, people talking about and worrying about things that don't matter at all, that did my head in. Yeah. And then slowly I adapt and acclimatize again, and then I'm the biggest bullshitter of all. So.
Would you recommend that more of us sort of pack in our 9-to-5 jobs and?
No, I think people, I just have to listen to where their passion and talent is. Like in our privileged part of the world where we're not struggling to survive every day because of hunger or war or drought or whatever people are suffering and struggling with. In our safe and cuddly part of the world, most of us can actually at least move towards where our talent and passion lies. So if you adjust your consumption to the reality that you want to live in instead of to where you are, I think a lot of people could change their career, their habits, their family situation to something that was more in balance with who they are and their human needs or personal needs. A lot of people compromise a lot with who they are and what they need, and a lot of people, I think, get stuck in thought and behavior patterns. They think they need that extra 2 cars. They think that they need to live in that certain postcode of London to live with the kind of people that they relate to, and they are on the treadmill thinking that if I only have this, I will be lucky, I will be happy or content. If I only have that. It's a kind of slavery, and I think it's possible to free yourself from that and adjust your life. And I'm not talking about 180-degree turns. I'm talking about just adjusting the dial sometimes. A little bit here and a little bit there makes a big difference. Turn the noise down. Delete 15, 20 people from your contact list on your phone because they're negative people. There's a lot of things everyone can do to make life better, I think.
It sounds like you're not a very materialistic person in that regard.
Well, there are a few things. I have a few weaknesses when it comes to
Come on.
Yeah, so first of all, the most embarrassing thing for me is that I travel too much. My CO2 footprint is way too big. So luckily, I'm on a team with Bertrand Piccard, who's trying to revolutionize air travel. So he did this solar impulse expedition around the world. It was very inspiring. And there are solutions that might make it more environmentally friendly for me to jet around the world. But I like a few little things that are expensive.
What's your weakness?
I like to drive a comfortable car, not a sports car.
Okay.
Yeah, I like really good food, and that doesn't have to be expensive. So I have my little things that are treats that I do, but there's a phenomenon, this really interesting phenomenon called hedonic adaptation, where the more you buy, the less gratification you have from it, and the sharper the decline in value. So you have this instant gratification, and you have a bell curve that falls down afterwards, and so this bell curve becomes steeper and shorter and lower every time you buy something. And that happiness you felt the first few times you bought something, you're chasing that happiness again, but it will never come back. And I think I disconnected myself from that.
Okay.
So I buy less. Unfortunately, I have like 3 jeans. So most people have 20, and I feel that I don't need that much. I like comfortable shoes. But apart from that, I don't go and look for status symbols or something like that.
Okay, so this comes down to the experience being having way more value than...
Yeah, so experience can also be in products, and an experience or knowledge has a different, it doesn't decline. Right. So the memory of a good holiday or learning a new skill actually grows on you. So compared to hedonic adaptation, where the more you buy, the less it's worth, experiences has an opposite curve. You have an experience when you're doing it and a gratification, and then it grows on you. The memory grows. Right. And you as a person become more interesting, more knowledgeable, and you seek new insight, new travels, and it's a positive spiral that turns up. So when you have bought the essentials and of course the things that you like to have, maybe stop there and then spend money on experiences, or buy stuff that gives you an experience more than just the bragging rights or social currency. Cool.
You mentioned space. If
maybe
space,
blurry, I don't know.
Okay. If space is not on the cards tomorrow, where's next?
So there are a few places that I haven't been to yet. I'd love to go to Australia, walk through the Simpson Desert. There's a lot of places. So my list when I was 19 years old, I made a list of things that I wanted to do. And my list is now at least 5 times longer. Even if I've done most of the things that are on my list when I was 19, I've been very lucky to do incredible things and incredible experiences. They're not huge achievements, but they've been incredible experiences for me. And my list is now longer than ever. And I feel optimistic that I can achieve or experience a lot of them. And I think life is going to be extremely exciting. And what I'm going to do in the future is nothing. What I've done so far is nothing compared to what I'm going to do in the future of experiences for myself and together with other people.
Okay, amazing. All right, thank you. I think we should have some questions if hopefully people have questions.
Shoot. You first.
Okay, thanks. You mentioned that a lot of preparation obviously goes in for yourself and the people who go with you, but you're still working with nature.
Yeah.
What percentage of exploration does not actually reach its initial target because nature gets in the way?
Hardly any time does nature get in the way. So there are times where flights are cancelled. We try to make buffers on both sides so that we can adjust to that. So a lot of the time we have to adjust the ambition because people don't reach their training targets. So my job is basically to bridge the gap between the ability and the ambition. For some people, it takes 1 year of training to reach the North Pole. For other people, like a lot of you fit people here could prepare a little bit and then pack your bags and come with me in April. Yeah, because you look fit, some of you. Not all of you. So my job is to bridge that gap, make sure that someone has opened these now.
Yeah.
No, nature will always throw curveballs, but most of them are predictable, or you can make buffers or contingencies for them. So, yeah. Practical things, angry wives and stuff come in the way more often. I'm just kidding. Yes.
Question?
Hi there. You mentioned that when you do your kind of 3-month treks, also that's an incredibly long time to be away from resources. And what kind of food do you actually eat when you get to that longer trip?
That's a good question. Different expeditions allows me different kind of food. Sometimes we have weight limitations on what we can bring, and then food is very efficient, just looked at as efficient fuel. So I compose a menu that is maximum calories and nutritional value to the weight. The weight and nutrition value is the key. So I found ways of maximizing that. So I found, like, if I grind up macadamia nuts and put some honey in it for taste, and that's 760 calories per 100 grams or something. It's really efficient. That actually tastes good too. On one expedition, I ate pemmican every day, which is a fat substance with some oats and raisins in it. Tastes terrible. I had 450 grams of it every day, and in the beginning, it was threatening to come up again 4 or 5 times, but you get used to it, and your hunger gets so strong that you're craving it at the end of the expedition. I always get food fantasies when I'm on the long expeditions, but other trips we have dog sleds or cars or resupplies, so we can compose really tasty menus. And in cold places, if we have access to snow, we melt snow and rehydrate freeze-dried rations. On mountains, we use springs or melt snow, or if it's warm, we carry water or find water where we can. Every trip is different, but I like food, so I try to make it interesting and give myself a few treats and compose menus that are right for the occasion. So if I'm going to burn a lot of calories and work hard, I have a lot of fat in my diet. If I need explosive strength and short bursts of energy, I have carbohydrates ready. So different food for different times.
I've actually got 2 questions. So the first one was just, obviously you were in banking for 10 years. Like, was there, I'm sure a lot of people here have sort of dreams, and is it like, what was their sort of moment that you were like, actually I want to go and leave this and go do a dream?
Yeah.
And the second question was, you talk a lot about people on expeditions and challenges, and you train them, but a lot of it's mental. Is there some mental training that you do? Is it that you tell them to switch off social media? Is there some mental training that you also do with these guys as well as physical?
Both good questions, and I think I should probably have done more of a transition period where I should have kept one foot in banking, so I wouldn't have to be very poor for so many years. So I made up a bigger buffer and not invested in shitty tech companies and lost everything. So one day I came to my boss and said, I can't do this anymore, I really want to quit. And he said, have you had an offer from someone else? I said, no. And he said he didn't believe me, so he gave me a gardening leave. So I was paid for a few extra months. That was nice. But for me, it wasn't like overnight anyway, because I had worked as a guide before banking, and I also had started, I did my first North Pole expedition in 1999, and I worked in banking 3-4 more years before I quit. But I managed to negotiate 2 months extra vacation every year to do my expeditions, promising that I would have the same financial results as the other guys on the desk. Yeah.
Did you?
I did, yeah. But I could have done so much better if I was more focused, but my heart wasn't in it. Yeah. And then the second question, yeah. Repeat it. Mental training, yes, very good. Thank you so much. That's how focused I am. The mental training is on many levels. You know, magic things happen when you get physically strong. There's a connection between physical strength and mental strength sometimes. It's often transferable. Not always, because a lot of people who train hard to be very strong, they do it because they're mentally weak. You see it typically in gyms where they're pumping muscles, and there's a lot of different aspects of the physical mental balance. But for me, it's learning as much as possible about myself, being curious about how I function, how my brain works, what things influence me, Where do I perform? How do I perform my best? How much sleep do I need? What is distracting me? Like trying to learn as much as possible about yourself. And there's so much literature, and you can also be curious about yourself interacting with other people. And from that, I think you're building more mental robustness by testing your limits, physical and mental limits, doing things that scare you under relatively safe conditions. You calibrate your courage, your mental courage and your physical courage, by testing yourself and building on top of other experiences, and being really curious about the whole thing, I think is a trick. There are also techniques to manifest or manifestation, I don't know what you call it, visualization, visualizing what you want to do, how it will feel to reach your goal, how it will feel to be in a dangerous situation. Try to visualize that so that when the feeling comes, the fear or the pain, that they're like old friends when they come. And I prepare people for the hunger sometimes, and telling them, because of the communication in a group and the group dynamics, hunger is a big minefield. People get grumpy and irrational, and some people get really difficult when they're hungry. So I try to prepare people for that during the training, push them to the limit, but also talk about rules of how we communicate, how we think, that we have a little bit of a delay mechanism. If you feel really grumpy and you feel that everyone around you are idiots, there might be something inside you that you can fix or adjust, and they might look better. We have a saying in Norway that if you meet more than 3 idiots in a day, you're the idiot. And I think that's a good rule, to look inside yourself and take responsibility of the experience you have. And taking responsibility is a key factor in mental strength. There can be other people to blame for your situation, but it's your responsibility to deal with it. And that's helped me a lot. Never feel self-pity. Of course I do, as well as human beings do, but like try to not feel self-pity or blaming other people or being bitter at things. Just, this is my situation. These people have done this, or this situation is like that. Now it's my responsibility to work from there. And I think that's given me a lot of mental strength. And maybe not work for other people, but yeah.
Cool. Anyone else?
Yes?
Do you have anyone that inspires you, or is there anyone that's been a source of inspiration in your life, living or dead?
Yeah, many people. So I've been shopping skills and abilities a little bit here and there, because one of the most disappointing things that happened to me when I grew up, I don't know when, but at one point I realized that all grown-ups were not smart, and they were not all good. I also realized that nobody's perfect. So what I've tried to do is that I find different skills and things that I observe in people that I like. I try to adapt or adopt, I don't know what the right word would be, but I try to acquire those skills and abilities or those values. So I'm shopping a little bit here and there, and of course I have heroes like Mark Pollock that very few people know about. I can 100% guarantee that my list of heroes and role models, they have very few famous people in them. Our celebration of celebrity and fame and all that is best case misled and distracting, and worst case it's corrupting our self-image, our value system. And so growing up, my neighbor was a big hero, my grandfather was a big hero, some of my teachers were big heroes and role models. I'm learning a lot from my daughter, from people that are close or people I meet and people that I look up to. And there are no actors, football players, or celebrities in that list of top 100. I know some incredibly accomplished and famous people, but I respect them for their achievements, but I wouldn't want their life or like, yeah. So I'm sure you guys know mothers or neighbors or whatever. Find yeah. I would love to hear what your heroes and role models are, because I think that that's more interesting for me. I want to learn about other people, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to. That's a long answer to a, yeah. Which is weird, really, because I'm sitting here with a journalist in Esquire magazine, or an editor in Esquire magazine, which is very much like, it's top heavy with celebrities and stuff like that. And I understand that we get the press that we deserve. So when we are focusing and we're worshipping royals and celebrities and all sorts of things, I know that we're getting a press that is full of that. But we can enjoy that. We can be inspired by it. We can have a sense of entertainment in it, but that's usually not where we should pick our values. Yeah. I know that, like, he's asking very relevant questions. So the interview we did in the magazine a couple of weeks ago actually is touching in on important things, and I'm happy that you, and here as well, we're talking about deep and meaningful things, and if I didn't know that you were going to do that, we wouldn't have been sitting here. And because I knew that he would ask nice, interesting questions and challenging questions. That's where I chose to be here, because all the other stuff is so meaningless. Yeah. You're a good guy.
Thanks, man.
I like your magazine
You're a
too,
good guy too,
especially when you have articles with me.
One more? No?
Shoot.
From what you're speaking about, integrity and ethics is quite important in what you do. Is there anybody that, or not anybody, but has there been a time where you've had to not accept a specific person to join you on your expedition based on any negative or unethical things you've heard about this person in the media or any of that?
I don't think so. I know that I have chosen not to go on expeditions with people that I either have trouble respecting, or I feel that our personalities don't fit well together. I've also chosen not to go to do TV productions where they want to fake things, and where the focus is way too much on the celebrity aspect of it and not the journey or the inspirational part of it. So I've said no thank you to that. I don't have a perfect integrity myself, but I'm really trying to work on it as often as I can. And I have really good friends reminding me when I'm wearing off the course. And this is the good and the bad part of being Norwegian, is that other Norwegians are a bit brutally honest with me sometimes. So they tell me when, and I have a daughter who's also very brutally honest sometimes and correct me when I'm like, now I'm being an idiot or something, and that is really good, and I like that. So again, I have to remind myself sometimes, if I feel something about another person, it's not necessarily them that is has a flaw or personality traits that is wrong. Sometimes it's in me. We mirror, or we reflect, or we experience other people from our own points of view. And maybe if I'm in a bad state or in a difficult mental state of mind or something like that, maybe I experience a really brilliant, good person the wrong way. And so I try not to blame other people for not liking them, for me not liking them. It can be something in me, and it's an interesting thing. I'm very curious about that feeling sometimes, where it comes from. Any other cool, like, last minute things that we like? Anything you want to add? Or?
I don't know, man.
No. It's like I could sit here for hours.
I think
But
we
have to let these people out in the real. No,
Is there anything you want to add?
Yes, I want to have a positive impact on this world, if I can, in a little way, directly with people that are around me, or indirectly with. So if everyone here could set aside some time for some meaningful conversations with the people they love, and talk about things like things we can do for our planet, for our society, for things, and not go to the next charity gala and flash your new Versace dress, but to do something meaningful locally or globally to make this world better. I think that's my last thing. Use your votes in an election. Use your energy to inspire or influence, and choose products and services that are sustainable. That's my last little thing.
It's hard to think of a better place to end, but thank you all for coming. Please stay and enjoy the Townhouse, and please thank you very much, Inge, for an amazing talk.